Let's get them. How are we going to get them little critters back to the ranch? They ain't big enough to run with the older ones. Take us forever at their pace.
That's right.
Feather Farm.
Way back in 1912, the big territory of Arizona became a full-fledged state of the USA. At the time, that wide open space was a kind of mixture of the Old West and the New. The cougar still prowled the high desert. Bands of coyotes roamed the brush country. Herds of wild horses hid out in the foothills. And down on the prairie, there was still room for the deer and the antelope to play. Early settlers in the territory had pioneered the business of cattle ranching, and now great herds grazed out on the open range. At the Flying O Ranch, though, the business was two-footed livestock. Right now, the whole herd was taking the daily dust bath. Yep, ostriches, the big birds that brought a new look to the Old West. In the early 1900s, ostrich plumes were in high favor with fashionable ladies all over the world. And in the agreeable Arizona climate, the newest business was feather farming. These three birds, Octavius here, and the girls, Ophelia and Gwendolyn, had been brought over from Africa. Ophelia and Gwendolyn had accepted the change, but Octavius, well, the way he looked at it, that was just another part of Africa out there. If there was some way to get out and get over that hill, he and the girls could mingle with their good friends, the grazing animals. The zebra, the wildebeest, the giraffe, and the ostriches pretty much had the same outlook on things. Now, whenever Octavius was daydreaming about Africa, he liked the scenery to be uncluttered and serene. But right about now, he spotted a couple of strangers wandering in his paradise. Things like that always sent him into a fine feathered fit. The strangers were two innocent, unsuspecting cowpokes that had drifted down from up north looking for work. Big Les Jordan and his sidekick, Shorty Parks, had heard there was ostrich ranching in Arizona, but they didn't put much stock in the story. That was their first mistake. The second was figuring this was an ordinary ranch. Of course, that garter on the gate should have been some sort of tip-off. The third and most serious mistake was being off their horses and on the ground when they invaded ostrich territory. Things looked peaceful and quiet, but the fact is, behind that old bunkhouse was a little head all full of big plans.
Les,
Huh?
look at that.
Look at what?
That. Them.
Ostriches!
Run, Les, run.
Ooh.
Help, Les. Help. Away.
That was real danger Shorty was facing, and Les, too.
Go on, Bird. Shoot, shoot.
Then right in the nick of time, the ranch owners returned from a little shopping trip.
Whoa! Whoa! Keep down! Keep down! Lay dead! Lay dead! Shoo, shoo. You behave, Octavius.
Young Nancy Hall and her Aunt Carrie had come west to go into the feather business. Right now, they needed help, and the cowpokes needed work.
Aren't those things kind of dangerous to keep as pets?
They're not pets. We raise them.
But you can't mix critters like that in with cattle.
What cattle?
Aren't there any cattle on this ranch?
Of course not.
Well, time to ride into the sunset. But the feather farm was short-handed, and Nancy wasn't about to let any prospects get away.
Aunt Carrie's going to make coffee. Won't you come in? I'm sure we can work this out.
I wouldn't count on that, ma'am.
Oh, come on, Shorty. It won't hurt to talk it over.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. The birds are really quite harmless. Not at all hard to take care of.
Octavius wasn't sure whether he'd won or lost that battle. While he was trying to puzzle out an answer, Ophelia and Gwendolyn had settled the question. They were already enjoying the fruits of victory. Well, they'd done it again. Those feather-brained females just kept forgetting that he was the bird with the bright red beak. Among ostriches, that meant he was the dominant, noble male, right on the peak of the pecking order. Looked like he'd have to make his point again with a little plain talk. Well, that kind of language was enough to keep Octavius dining alone for about 2 seconds. Ostriches aren't a bit particular about their food. They'll eat most anything, including a hot chili pepper. Once. When this feast was finally over, they just couldn't swallow another bite. Now, the fact is, this day of fuss and furor marked a turning point at the feather farm. 2 bird wranglers were signed up, sprucing up and reading up on ostriches. And that'd mean quite a change for the livestock around here. That evening, there was an important discussion about the importance of ostriches. Nancy had put on a little supper club act to show how ostrich plumes were used in fashionable circles, a fringe benefit with a purpose. When the cowpokes heard that one good feather might be worth $50, they got the idea. Ostriches were mighty valuable critters. It was early one morning, several days later, that Nancy and Aunt Carrie set out on a trip to the fashion centers away back east. They'd market a few plumes and maybe order a few more head of livestock. With help at hand, this was their chance to get away. Octavius figured it was his chance, too.
Hey, shut the gate!
him off.
Well, the ladies were facing a long, hard journey. And behind them, 2 amateur bird herders were facing a long, hard battle with 3 obstreperous ostriches, including one with an escape complex as big as all outdoors. Naturally, the U.S. government had issued a dozen different bulletins on ostrich culture.
It is important for the ostrich to get to know you. The simplest way to accomplish this is through feeding the birds.
Now, ostriches are long on appetite, but being short on teeth, they need help in grinding up food. So they're always swallowing sand, gravel, shiny pebbles, such like, and so forth.
Shoo, shoo! Go on, feed it!
Well, feed the birds and they'll get to know you. That's what the book said.
Hey, stop that!
Fortunately, there were only 2 or 3 pages gone, and they weren't very good anyway. Next day, Les and Shorty tackled a project called Put the Hood on the Ostrich. According to the book, this made the birds easy to handle when it came time to prune back the plume feathers.
Get on now.
This practice session gave Octavius a chance to work on his own pet project. All that country out there, and he couldn't get to it. It was so all-fired frustrating, Octavius just had to pick on something. The bird wranglers were pretty well checked out on ostrich hoods by now. But at the same time, Octavius was about to shake his own problem and create one for Shorty.
Les, come on, trouble!
Grab him, Shorty.
Shut the door! Shut the gate!
Hang on.
Well, it was time that bronco bird was taught a lesson.
Go on. Hey, not
Slow down, bird! Whoa there! Whoa! I said whoa! Slow down, bird! Whoa there! Whoa! Whoa, I said! Steady, boy! Steady!
That's it, ride him. Ride him, Shorty, attaboy. Give him his hair. Let him out.
It wasn't more than 2 days later when, all at once, ostrich mating season arrived. That meant Octavius finally had to decide. Would it be Ophelia or Gwendolyn? Well, first thing was to reel off a few steps of the mating dance and see who was best at following his lead. This would be a hoedown to a showdown. The grand prize would be Octavius.
Les, you better come quick.
What now?
Octavius could have danced all night, but he had to come up with a decision. It was the Wild West Watusi with a torrid twist that really wrapped it up for Octavius. Octavius was ready to present himself to the lucky winner, Ophelia. Well, Gwendolyn hoped they'd be very happy. One thing Les and Shorty had yet to learn was that one mated pair of ostriches and one odd ostrich can make two ornery herds. The book had said the big birds were broom shy, and they were too. So the cowpokes finally swept the three-bird herd back together, and that was good, considering that events were shaping up for an unexpected turn.
Hey, somebody's coming.
We don't want anybody to see us doing this.
You move the birds toward the back of the house. I'll get rid of him.
If this story ever got around, Shorty and Les figured their reputations would be shot for sure. Fact is, though, there'd already been some talk. So this puncher had come 5 miles out of his way just to have a look. Of course, he said he only wanted to drink of water, and the code of the West said Les had to give it to him. Les had things pretty well in hand up front. Out back, Shorty was still doing all right with 2 birds. But Octavius was looking at the open door to Africa with an old friend waiting just outside. Yes, sir, that had to be a wildebeest. At least Octavius was pretty sure it was. No doubt what the gate was, though. It was open. That's what it was.
Hey, come back here! Les! Stampede! Stop them! Oh!
Get back in here! Whoa, birds!
Well, the big breakout was on, and everybody came out ahead. Les and Shorty headed for their horses. The cowboy had to head off his cows. And the ostriches were heading for the hills. It was over the flats and into the foothills before Octavius finally slowed down to give everybody a little breather. Now, this old homestead had been recently reclaimed by a desert hawk. He had figured he was top bird in these parts, but now he saw that had been a big mistake. Any way he looked at it, the odds were tipped to favor those king-size claim jumpers. Now, Les and Shorty weren't exactly the best trackers in Arizona, but those ostrich prints weren't easy to overlook. They kept figuring they'd find their strayed stock just over the next ridge. But that hope, along with the trail, was about to be wiped out by a dust storm boiling up in the valley beyond. The ostriches were caught on the far edge of the storm. They just shifted into high gear and set out to outrun it. But Les and Shorty were caught smack dab in the middle. Meanwhile, the three runners had moved out of the storm's path and found nothing but clear sailing ahead. Now, about the best thing ostriches do is destroy distance. They take in around 20 feet with every stride and hit maybe 50 miles an hour. In the wake of the storm, Les and Shorty were up against double trouble. Wind and dust had covered every sign. Now they'd have to sight hunt those ornery birds. And country this big would sure use up a lot of looking. By now, Octavius figured he was deep in the heart of Africa. Trouble was, he still hadn't spotted a single friend. Ophelia didn't know or care about that. She had enough trouble just keeping up with her long-winded mate. Poor Gwendolyn, being a spinster, wasn't bound by marital ties, and if she had anywhere else to go, she certainly wouldn't be here. About 5 miles back, Octavius had run out of reasons for running. He just didn't have sense enough to stop. It was his stomach that finally called a halt. Then, right in the middle of his meal, Octavius spotted one friend he'd been looking for. He just knew that was a zebra. In black and white or living color, it was all the same to Octavius. That being the case, he'd really hit the jackpot. These wild horses had no idea they were up for adoption. But that's what Octavius had in mind. At first, the Mustangs were a little skittery, but the ostriches just moseyed along with them. This hungry cougar had been following the horses for several hours. He wasn't about to make a move against the whole herd, but right now he found just what he'd been hoping for: stragglers. It was Octavius that spotted the danger. Of course, the cougar came across as an African lion, but that wasn't to be dismissed either. One thing about Octavius, in his own element, he was wary and wilderness wise. The cougar was going to get a lot of close watching. That circling maneuver had almost fooled Octavius, but not quite. The mare got close enough for one good kick. The cougar called it quits. With their height advantage and high-level alertness, the big birds were natural-born lookouts and leaders. And so as the days passed, the ostriches more and more often led the way, and the horses became willing followers. Now, it's mighty hard to beat ostriches when it comes to the business of finding food and water. In this little valley, they found plenty of both, all in one place. This garden spot had everything that bird or beast could ask for, except a nest. That called for a discussion. Now, the way it is with ostriches at times like this, the prospective father gets to do the choosing. No, not there. But where? Maybe over there. Of course, a lot depended on how the little woman felt about it. Well, it seemed to have possibilities. Pretty soon, Ophelia could just see herself in that place. And in no time at all, she was on her sweet little nest somewhere in the west, just letting the rest of the world go by. Now, in Ophelia's production schedule, Old Mother Nature had to set the pace. But it wasn't quite fast enough to suit Octavius. He could hardly wait to start raising a family. Having one youngster like Papa Prairie Dog would be just fine. Or half a dozen like the skunk would be even better. What Octavius couldn't take was all this waiting, watching, and wondering. An owl family, already full-feathered, was too much for Octavius. He just had to get a progress report. That meant no change and don't keep asking. Then, while Octavius was smoothing his ruffled feathers, the big announcement finally came. 3 pounds of grade A egg. Octavius meant to congratulate Ophelia, but he was struck speechless at sight of that egg. It was just beautiful. Ophelia had the hang of it now. She set about filling that nest without any more delays. Ostrich eggs hatch in about 40 days, and the birds take turns on the nest. Octavius worked the night shift when shadow patterns matched his mottled plumage. During the heat of the day, the birds let the Arizona sun warm the eggs. So they'd all get an even warmth, Ophelia regularly turned them over. Then Octavius would check them over and decide they needed turning again. But each time he'd put his big foot in it, Ophelia'd have to tell him off again. Then they'd leave the eggs in care of the midday sun and go out and have lunch together. It was on one of these away-from-home occasions that an egg-stealing scoundrel happened by. The skunk had just heisted a roadrunner's nest. He was so happy with his haul, he almost overlooked the loot of a lifetime. He only went under there to see if those things were fastened down, but he couldn't resist taking a minute to wallow in all that wealth. With one nest egg like this, a skunk could retire and just live off of the interest. Trouble was, he couldn't swing the principal. This was a nest robber's nightmare. A whole bundle of boodle, but too heavy to carry and too big to bury. He'd have to go back and pick up where he'd left off. But now it didn't seem worthwhile. He'd always remember how he'd failed to crack the big time. Day after day, Les and Shorty kept looking for those dad-blamed birds. But the runaways had swung a big half circle, and the two cowpokes were way off the track. Well, as time passed by, one unavoidable accident and two unfertile eggs took a toll from the ostrich's nest. So what with one thing and another, only 3 chicks would hatch from this nest. Number 1 was already on the way. Ophelia just wanted a whole, healthy child. Naturally, Octavius was rooting for a boy. Well, that son of his was something else. Less than a minute old, and already he was on solid food. Actually, of course, the eggshell contained minerals that the youngster needed. Octavius favored a balanced diet of minerals and vitamins. So it was, eat your salad, son. By now, chick number 2 was out, but having a little trouble getting his land legs. Meanwhile, over at the nursery, there was a youngster with a hang-up. Ophelia decided only firm parental prodding would break through the shell that surrounded her little chick. Even Octavius was surprised when number 3 made it by just 1 foot. Chicks 1 and 2 didn't even notice 3, but they should have. She was the only baby sister they had. Naturally, Ophelia was pleased and proud. Octavius was stupefied and proud. Of course, it was a fine family, no doubt about it. Every time Les and Shorty returned from bird hunting, they'd ask themselves, why didn't they just pack up and leave? Actually, they had a couple of pretty good reasons. They were both too darn honest, and they had 2 nice boss ladies. Up in the hill country hideout now, poor Gwendolyn was feeling downright broody about not having a little family, like Ophelia had. Then she spotted a roadrunner, and it kind of looked like one of the triplets. No, the triplets were all here. Well, hallelujah, a little one for her very own. All she had to do was catch it. Gwendolyn came face to face with her little chick and just got all dewy-eyed. The little chick got that mother love message and got out of there. Being a full-grown female, the roadrunner had nothing against motherhood. But 300 pounds of parent was just too much. As the days passed by, the water hole continued to be a place of easy living. With plenty of food around, the young ostriches were growing fast. They'd eat themselves into adults in about 6 months. Right now, though, they were still small enough to wander away and get into big trouble, if the right troublemaker happened along. The brothers lost all interest in eating, and little sister didn't notice that the tables were about to be turned. Now, one thing Octavius couldn't stand was a hyena. It was during the big chase that Octavius left a telltale message hanging on the sage. Well, there was high country up ahead, and the troublemaker was heading for it. Good enough. Every so often, the Mustangs would get a little restless, and they'd go somewhere else to feed for a day or so. Octavius just stayed behind and watched them go. Cross-country travel was out of the question for the three youngsters. For the past 3 days now, 2 travel-worn and saddle-weary cowpokes had been camping out and combing new country. They didn't know it yet, but the fact was they were on a mighty warm trail.
Water?
Hey, look.
Huh?
You see what I see? Come on.
Is it one of theirs?
Sure is. See? Look at that.
Maybe they're still around. Let's take a look. There they are! Chicks! How about that?
Let's get them.
How are we gonna get them little critters back to the ranch? They ain't big enough to run with the older ones. Take us forever at their pace.
That's right. And separating the big ones from the babies ain't gonna be easy.
We'll hood them.
With what?
With our socks, that'll do it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
At first, it looked like faulty equipment might defeat the whole idea of putting hoods on the runaway birds. But Shorty happened to have a spare. Knowing that food was the way to an ostrich's heart, the cowpokes had carried sacks of grain just in case. A trail of that soon got results. Ophelia was taking the bait.
You grab her. I'll hood her.
Right. Now.
Oh.
Get.
Oh.
Get up here.
On you. Get her on the front, Shorty. Get her on the front.
Yeah. Okay, together now. Let's get.
Okay, there we go. There she goes. Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, hat. Oh, get your hat.
Come on now. Come on, lady.
Here, she's going. Go on, keep going. Come on.
Well, no reason why one trick wouldn't work twice. Gwendolyn was going for the grain until it was time to go for Gwendolyn. For Octavius, a change of tactics. This bird went for shiny objects, belt buckles or buttons. Les remembered that. Poor old bird-brained Octavius. He'd traveled a long, rocky road to win his freedom. Now he bartered it all for a bauble. It took a little more artistry to come up with an idea to hook hard to get Gwendolyn. But there it was, the ostrich mating dance. There wasn't a ghost of a chance now for the young ostriches. It was a short run, a fast shuffle, and a quick wrap-up. Well, this took care of the last little detail, but it did leave a big one.
That's real good, Shorty. But just where are you gonna sit?
I'll tell you where I'm going to sit. Right square on old Octavius. If he should get lost this time, I'm going to be lost with him.
Now, wait.
Now get this straight, Bird. There ain't no clothesline out here, so I'm sticking on you till we get back to the ranch. And don't you forget it. Give me a hand, Les. Hold him steady. Easy now. Take the socks off the others as soon as I get this critter going, and then be ready to ride.
You sure you want to do this?
No, but I'm gonna do it.
All right.
Take his hood off and stand aside, partner. Up there! Hee-yah!
Hang on, boy!
Then, by a happy coincidence, right on cue, the Mustangs returned to the old stomping ground. Les knew he was looking at a whole new future if there was just some way to get that herd back to the ranch. Turned out there was a way. As went the ostriches, so went the horses. But if there was triumph here, there was defeat at the Flying O Ranch. Nancy and Aunt Carrie had finally returned, but only to pack up and pull out again. Back east, they'd found that the feather fat had faded and the price of plumes had plummeted. Back here, the men were gone, so was the stock, and they couldn't afford to keep the ranch. Only a miracle could save the feather farm. Well, there was one on the way. Shorty had his mind on keeping Octavius in line. But the herd of valuable horses was on Les's mind. That little boss lady Nancy would sure be pleased about this. The little boss lady was taking one last farewell look. She'd miss the flying old ranch, the big birds, the big country. Yes, maybe even that big, good-looking, good-for-nothing, bird-rustling cowboy, too. Well, fashions may come, fashions may go, but horses go on forever. So to Aunt Carrie, this may have looked like just a dust storm, but it was actually a cloud with a silver lining.
That's Shorty and the ostriches.
Hit up there! Hiya!
Come on, get up. Get up. Get up.
Hit up! Hiya! Open the gate!
Well, the Flying O was open for business again. The ostriches would make, well, tolerable pets, but the Mustangs would make money, and that was for sure.
Howdy, Miss Nancy.
When the dust finally settled, Octavius kind of took stock. The girls seemed to be happy enough. Chances are Gwendolyn would win the next courting dance contest, seeing as how Ophelia'd be busy with her family. The ostriches and Mustangs had been happy together, so there'd be no adjustment problem there. Naturally, Octavius couldn't understand human partnerships, business-wise or otherwise. But one thing he had learned, those wide open spaces were nice enough to visit, but he wouldn't want to live out there. The pickings were too slim and not half as good as ranch grub. So it was a real happy ending all the way around. And since this was his story, why don't we give Octavius the last word?